All right, well, sopranos, if you're out there, I hope you are watching. We are going to start a sectional today. I just wanted to give you a couple of notes on some things. First of all, you should have a score for the Beethoven Choral Fantasy. So there's a PDF that's been sent out. Make sure you have that in front of you. For tonight, we will also do the solo quartet sections, the parts that are marked as solo. We will do some rehearsal on those. I'm going to take some time to talk a little bit about breath marks and things like that after we do basically a run through of this choral section. And for those of you who have sung it before, hopefully some things will come back. For tonight, don't worry about text. Sing on ta or la or da, whatever you want to do. If you feel comfortable with the German, go ahead. And if you want to, I suppose you can sing on the English, though that will not be used, so that would be up to you. A couple of other quick things. If you want to make comments or have questions about anything in the feed, make sure you go into your event, your sectional event, the Soprano Sectional event, and enter stuff in the discussion section. You can be watching this live on our Facebook page or through the event. It should be there as well. So I'm happy to be here with Dennis, and Aisha is helping out with the video and the sound tonight. So we're happy to kind of start, and we're going to go ahead and begin with the choral section here. That is, what do you want to start? About 4 measures before there?
Before C?
Yeah, before no, we're like about 4 before, after A, about 8 measures or so. Somewhere around there.
But these are the solo parts.
Yeah, that's fine. And then we're going to let's run through those solo parts as well.
Okay, all 4.
Yeah, just the sopranos, okay? So if you want to give us a little into that.
Yeah, from A.
Yep. Here comes the tutti. Solo section. Everyone in. new tempo, and solo section. Tutti. Two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, and. One, two, one. Awesome. So, sopranos, if we can go back, please, and I want to just give some notes on breath marks. And I'm actually going to give notes for the solo sections as well. If we end up having a chance to perform this, I want to, and you're interested in doing this, I want you to know where those are. So, in our pagination, it's actually marked as page 2 of the music. Sopranos, the quintet women's part, your first breath is after the word strife or after the word bloon at the top of page 2. Okay, and then after all these, of course, there are lifts, there are breaths on all of those. At the top of page 3, second measure, after spricht, there is a lift. After licht, in the next line. And then, of course, releases after the fermatas. It is a quartets, or the quintet section, actually. The men continue at the top of page 4. After that second fermata, that's not a tutti entrance. The tutti entrance is at C. And in this tutti section, we're essentially doing 4-ish 4-bar phrases. So including the pickups, that means our first breath is on the top of page 5. Okay, after the first beat, and then on the bottom of page 5 after the first beat as well, right? So they're kind of in that same spot. You can basically think 4-bar phrases. After the fermata at the top of 6, there's a lift, and then we're at letter D. A note at the top of page 7, we have these short 8th note moments here. When we get to the word Zählen, that's the top of page 3, the third measure. Our emphasis is on the downbeat, so we have stressed, unstressed moment, Zählen. We'll talk more about that when we get to some text, but just so you're aware that that's coming up. When we get to E, this is a solo section as well. So the breath for sopranos is at the bottom of page 8, the third measure after die Gaben, after Gaben, before the next die Gaben, right? That pick up into the last measure, lift right before that. At F, on the top of page 9, there's a breath, and that's the beginning of the tutti section. The bottom of page 9, the third measure, after the first beat, there's a breath. And then at the bottom of page 10, before we get to the or right as we land on the presto, we have a lift there. Kunst, Freude, and it's fast, right? It's a very quick lift. It's mostly for space as much as it is for air, and to feel that new tempo. We'll continue with some breath marks in a little bit, but I want to go back to the tutti section beginning at C. The tutti section beginning at C. Let me make sure that there are no questions in the feed right now. Okay. At C, we come in on beat 2. Here's an E for the sopranos.
Only soprano.
Yeah, just the soprano part. Yep, just sopranos. And 1. Lift. And breath. Fermata. Out. One, 2, 1 and 2. 2 and 1 and 2. And 2. And Z. 2 and 1 and 2. 2, 1 and go. 2, 1 and 2. This is a solo section. Beat D. Good. And let's stop there. Let's do that again. Same spot, starting at C. This time with accompaniment. Okay. So you're starting at C. Here is an E for you, with the accompaniment right on C. And top of 7. And Z. 2. Solo section. Here's the tutti. Good, we're going to stop right there for a second. And I just want to go through now, let me double check there's no comments happening, okay? And I want to make sure that, I just closed that out completely. I want to make sure that we have our breaths here at this presto section. So starting at most of them, because there's a lot of rests, we don't have to worry about where breaths happen. Just want to make sure that the few that do happen, we are in coordination. So I'm on page 18. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th measure. Between the 5th and the 6th measure, that's Gunst. After Gunst, then we'll take a lift. Okay, again, 4 measures or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5 measures. After the next Gunst, that's the bottom of 18, the 4th measure. Lift before Gotter Gunst. Okay, and then at J, a lift, as if you were going on with the tenor solo part, right? So we don't want to carry over into the second measure of J. We want to have a lift before that. In the solo quartet, section for the sopranos. Then at the bottom of 14, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure, there's a lift after Gaben, and the tempo is fast, so it really doesn't feel like much of a breath, but we need a little bit of air, so that's where we need to take it. At the top of 15, we come back in with the tutti section, and through all of this, again, because of all the rests between the phrases, we don't really have any group breaths until we get to the top of page 18. And at the top of page 18, on the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure, we have a lift. Just like we did before, Gunst. Bottom of page 18, the second measure after Gunst. Bottom of 18, the last measure after Gunst. And then that's a quick page turn to a downbeat with text. And that feels a little bit funky in that moment. We haven't had that exact rhythmic moment happen before where you need to sing on the downbeat. So you have to be aware and maybe write in your text or the pitch that you need to sing at the bottom of page 18 so you know when to come in. So we're going to go back to G. And we're going to start at this faster section, and G begins on page 10. Let me see if I can bring the, I want to bring the event back up here. Oh, where are you? There we go. Okay. Nice. All right, Steve is squeezing me in as hard as he can to make sure I can make these notes. I see. That's pretty good. All right. So starting at G, here's the soprano pitch. Let's do that pick up into the second measure. Dee, 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 dee. And pick up into the second measure of G. We need that E for the soprano. Yep. And 1. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. 2, 1, 2, 1. 2, 1. And 1, 2, and 2, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and 1, 2. Lift. 1, 2, 1, off. Off solo. Now top solo. Lift. And tutti, N. 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 1, 2, N. 2, 1. 2, N. 1, 2, 1. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and short 2. Lift. Lift. N. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Off. Good. So that G section, when we have the quick tempo there, is kind of repetitive material, but we got to be ready for that when it happens. So let's kind of get into that moment. How about F? How about F? This is the pickup into the second measure of F with some accompaniment here, and we're going to go into the presto and head to the end. Sopranos, the pickup into the second measure of F. Pick up in where the tutti entrance. Mostly accompaniment. Here's that E and 1. And up. two, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 2, and 2, and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. Lift. 1, 2, lift. Off. 1, 2, 1. 2T and 2. 1, 2, 2, and go. 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 2, and 2, and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Yeah, it's a lot of impressive stuff in there. And I remember when we rehearsed this the last time, first of all, the wonderful playing of Dennis, so I hope you're enjoying that at home and hope you're getting some wonderful rehearsal in with this. But I remember putting this all together when we did it the last time and thinking about, oh, okay, well, this is not too difficult as far as what we're learning for pitches, and really not that difficult for the German, but it did get complicated pretty quickly as we were going, and there were things that, it was just reminding ourselves about things from rehearsal to rehearsal. So I'm not exactly sure when we'll be back to this piece, but hopefully in the next few weeks, as we're doing some more rehearsals, we will spend some time with this again. There's some other things I also want to be looking at, and we also have some other events coming up. I think the big one that I want people to really be aware of is our November 5th, I hope that's right. November 5th, our Top 10 Choral Works event. We are really opening that up to the public, along with these rehearsals as well, but that event we're really hoping to have some participation, people watching, as we hear 10 different pieces from 10 choir directors across the region telling us about why they chose the piece that they did. So I think that's going to be a fun night. Next week, we'll have some more information coming about what the plan is. We may not have sectionals. We may have a larger group rehearsal. So there'll be more details about that. We'll be streaming it and all of that, and we'll get some information to you about that. So I'm gonna let sopranos be done here for a little bit. Next up is altos, and we'll start with altos in just about 5 minutes. Okay, so we're starting with an alto sectional now. We are on the Beethoven Choral Fantasy. I just want to give a few announcements for Aisha and Denise. First of all, or Denise, I'm sorry. Aisha and Dennis, thank you for being here tonight, and we are so happy to have an opportunity to still do some rehearsing. But also, they have to suffer through my announcements 4 times tonight. I apologize about that. A couple of things that I wanted to mention. First of all, this is just a different kind of situation to do things and rehearse in this kind of a setup. I hope it is meaningful to you. I hope that you had a chance to find the PDF that you need for the music tonight, and you're able to look through that as we go and sing along from home as best you can to get some rehearsing in. I'm hoping that this piece can be performed at some point during this season. It was originally scheduled to have been in the spring 2021. We'll see what happens, and hopefully we can make something work with it, because it's a great piece and would love to showcase Dennis again on the piano solo portion. So other things that are coming up that I wanted to mention is we will be having another rehearsal, virtual rehearsal next week. We're going to give some details on that at the beginning of next week on how that's going to work. Again, it'll be a Facebook Live virtual stream, but we may not be doing sectionals. We may be doing a larger group rehearsal, and so we'll give you some more details about that as it comes up. You may have seen some posts about, and I forgot to mention this during the Soprano Sectional, that Carla Mackey has had her baby, and we are thinking about her and praying for that family, as there are some health issues, but they are doing well, hanging out in Omaha to make sure baby is fine. And so I put a post up on Facebook about that today. And last week we had our streaming event of the Singing Revolution. I also wanted to point out another DVD that came out by the same people that made the Singing Revolution. It's called To Breathe as One, and it speaks very specifically to the actual song festivals that happen, and talks about their specific history and more recent history, what's been going on with them. Of course, that it is a few years old. The last song festival, as we talked about last week, was last year, and so they've kind of avoided the COVID issue, it seems, and I'm hoping that they may be planning to have their next one in a few years here. It's every 5 years, so hopefully by then they will be able to have that event. Otherwise, things going forward for us include November 5th, we have a special event with choir directors from across the region who are telling us about their top piece, and so that's kind of a top 10 list of choral pieces. That's going to be a public event. All of our events are public this year, but we are particularly encouraging people to invite family and friends to watch that live event. We'll set up a viewing party for that, a live feed for that event, and I'll be hosting and talking about the guest conductors that are participating in it, and showing the videos and the music, the choral pieces as a part of that. So for tonight, the first thing we're going to do is actually just run the choral section of the Choral Fantasy from beginning to end. This is an alto sectional this time, so we will be focused on the alto pitches as we go through. But this first time really is just to get a chance to hear what this feels like and sounds like again, as it's been a few years since we have rehearsed it, and maybe for some of you it's brand new. We will go back then and do some more specific work on the alto parts in particular, as well as talk a little bit about breath marks and how we're phrasing this piece. So we're going to start from the top of the A section, and altos, you're reading your part. Even if it says solo, read the solo sections as well. 2D section at C. D. Solo section. Two D. New tempo. Top of 11. 2. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 to E natural, and 1, 2. Off. Solo section. End. Two, one, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, E natural, 2, 1. 1, 2, and here's top of 18. Here's a C at the top of 18, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. All right. So we're going to go back here to the first, I want to go back to the beginning with the solo quartet section to talk through some of these rests, these lifts. We're going to take a moment to breathe in this. This moves along quickly, so I want to make sure we know where those are. If you are interested in doing these solo sections, they're really, they actually end up being sextets. It's 6 groups, 6 parts, right? The alto part is always on its own, though, in some ways, right? It's 2 soprano parts and an alto part, and then 3 men's parts. So for altos, in the solo sections, your first breath is at the bottom of what's marked as our page 1. So it's the 1, 2, 3, 4th measure at the bottom of page 1 after the word 9 or life in English. At the top of page 12, after the word blune in the 3rd measure, there is a lift. And then, of course, after every fermata, there will be a lift as well. Glad to see Jan on here. That's great. Trying to make sure I'm tracking what's happening with our questions and comments. If you have any as we go, please put them in the comments, and I'll try and make sure I get to those. So we're starting at B. This is all men, tenors and basses, I should say. At the top of page 3 in the 2nd measure, there's a lift for them, and so that's just setting up the model, right? So that's tenors and basses. Look at the 2D section now at letter C. In this section, we're essentially doing 4-bar phrases, and since we have a pickup into the second measure of C, our lift for that comes in measure 5. So the top of, or not measure 5, top of page 5, I'm sorry about that. Top of page 5, after the first beat, there's a lift. And then at the bottom of page 5, after the first beat, there's a lift there as well. So we're just creating 4-bar phrases. There's a lift after the fermata, a breath after the fermata at the top of page 6, and then we are at rehearsal D. At rehearsal D, there's lots of space in between everything, so we're not assigning any particular breaths. You take breath as you need to. Top of page 7, I just want to point out some a musicality moment, an issue of making sure we're thinking about how we're going to phrase things. On the third measure, we have the word zählen, and we want the emphasis to be on that first syllable, zählen, right? So it feels heavier on the downbeat than on the and of 1. When we get to the top of page 8 at E, this again is a solo quartet or sextet section. Really, this is a quartet. At the bottom of page 8, the altos enter, and you don't have any particular breaths as the soloist, except for the breath that everybody takes before we come in at the tutti at letter F. So top of page 9, the third measure after the first beat, everyone takes a breath. The bottom of page 9, in the third measure, after the first beat, after the word Kunst, everyone takes a breath, take a lift there. And then we come into the presto section. There is a little bit of a lift after the downbeat at G at the presto, after Kunst, Frodi. So a little bit of a lift there. Not really enough time to really get a breath, but it's a chance to put some space in to make it more rhythmically accurate. On 11 and most of 12 as well, there are no group breaths, they come in the rests. When you get to the, and part of the reason for that is you really kind of need to tank up for page 12, make sure you have a lot of air to get through the long phrase. Now we're moving at a pretty quick tempo, so it's not overly difficult to get through if you have been getting lots of air. Page 13, at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure, after the word Gunst, guter Gunst, there is a lift in that measure. At the bottom of page 13, 1, 2, 3, fourth measure, we're going to take another lift before guter again, after Gunst. At the top of page 14, letter J, we're going to take a lift there as well, as if we were coming in with the tenor solo part. We don't want to sing into the measure where the tenor solo begins. So we want to make sure we put a lift there before that downbeat. Bottom of page 14, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure. There's a lift after Gaben. Not much, but a quick one. Top of page 15, the tutti entrance. There's a lift before the tutti entrance after Kunst. And again, this section has a lot of rests in it, and so where there are no marked group breaths, but it gives you a chance to build up some air and energy for the top of 17, where we have that long phrase again. Top of page 18, 1, 2, 3, fourth measure. Top of 18, there is a breath after the word Gunst. And again, bottom of 18, just 4 measures later, after Gunst again. And then at the bottom of 18, the last measure, there's a lift. Now the thing to note is that we have a quick downbeat coming up on the top of 19 with a pitch. For altos, it's not too hard because you're singing the same pitch. In fact, everybody is. But you need to remember to sing on the downbeat there, and we have a long phrase. So that lift at the bottom of 18 is really important on that last measure, so you've got plenty of air to make it through the last phrase. So let's go ahead and go kind of section by section. I'm going to break this down a little bit more, and we'll start at the tutti section at C. Tutti section at C. That is on page 4, and this is just the alto pitches. And 1. Lift. And. 1, 2, 1, and go. short, short. Zählen, zählen. 2 and 1 and go. 2, 1 and 2. 2, 1 and 2. Short, 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 short. This is the solo section. Here's the alto solo. And go. Good. Let's go back and do that section again at C with mostly accompaniment this time. We'll give you the opening pitch here at C, and then we're going to do this with accompaniment. And 1. Here's the 2T N. New tempo and good. All right. Nice. I just wanted to mention something. Thank you, Dennis, so much. I just wanted to mention something that I meant to mention before we started altos is you can sing on whatever text you would like to right now. We're not going over the German. So you can use ta or la or da or sing on the English if you want, though we won't be using that. Or if you feel comfortable with the German, you can certainly use that as well. So let's go. Now we're going to start with your pitches alone here at the presto. So in our new tempo, and 1. And 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, E natural, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 1, and lift, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is solo section. Ready, solo. 2T, N. N, D, D. 2, 1, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, N. 2, N. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, N. 1, 2. Quick page turn. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, D, D. Good. We are going to head back to that. We're going to go back to letter F so we can make the tempo change. Letter F is on page 9. And mostly accompaniment here, And a one. D, D, D. New tempo and two, one, two, and two, and two, and two, and two, one, two, one, two, E natural. One and one, two. Solo section. And tutti. Two, one, two, two, and two, and two, and two, and two, one, two, one, two, and one, two. All right. So, first of all, thank you for your time tonight. These sectionals kind of go fast, but I hope you got a little bit of something out of this. I hope it was a chance to make some music at home and an opportunity to kind of see what we're digging into for some of this season, with hopes that we will be able to do a performance of some kind on this. We'll get some information out again about next week's rehearsal, and we may actually have a longer time together with that next week. I want to make sure I've picked up any questions. I don't see any right now. Let me check the event itself. And I want to thank you again all for helping us out and participating in this as we are in new adventures of trying to do new things with technology and all of that. So if you do have any other questions after the fact, you want to let me know, you can send me an email or you can put them in the Facebook comments. I will go back and double check to make sure things get answered as they need to be, and look forward to seeing you again soon. tenors, we're going to be starting your sectional here in just a very quick moment. Looks like we are we're going to be looking at the choral fantasy tenors this evening, so make sure you have a PDF of that printed out in front of you so you can make some marks in your score. I've noticed that my stand has been sinking while I've been up here, so I'll lift mine up a little bit higher. So this is our third sectional tonight, sopranos and altos. We're in the first hour, and now we'll have tenors and basses in our second hour. And I'm so pleased to be back with Dennis in First United Methodist Church. We are happy to be hosted here. Aisha is helping us out with cameras and sound this evening. We are so pleased to have that. They get to hear my announcements 4 times tonight, so no excuses for not knowing what we did. I'm pleased that we have an opportunity to do something for singers tonight, for our members of our organization, but also an opportunity to put things out into the world and make some music. And these events are open to the public. So if you want to share this with friends and family to see what you were, to show them what you were working on, what you were doing, or to have them join in, print them off some music and have them sing along, they are certainly welcome. We have some other events coming up that are kind of tangential to what we're doing, but I think very important. The one that I really want to point out is November 5th, and that is the 10 choral works presentation. And so friends and colleagues of mine in the choral field, conductors, are going to be presenting a piece that they think is seminal to the repertoire, or just one they really like, or something they have a personal connection to. And so we'll hear from 10 different directors that evening and hear 10 different pieces of music. And so far, I'm already very excited. The information I've gotten from them is going to be a diverse evening of events. So that's November 5th, a live stream event, and I hope that you will participate in that and invite friends and family. That is a big public event for us this fall. Next week, we are going to be having some virtual rehearsal as well. It may not be sectionals, it may be a group rehearsal, so we'll talk about what that means. I'll send out an email with information again on how to connect into that and what the process for that is going to be and what we're going to be rehearsing. So that's where we're looking. I'm going to try and make sure I'm watching our feed today, this evening as well during this sectional. If you have questions or comments or anything, please put them in the live feed so that I can try and answer those questions for you, or share those comments as we need to. We are, again, looking at the Beethoven, the choral fantasy, and what I want to do this first time through is actually go through the entire choral section. This is focused on the tenor parts this time, and our goal tonight is to do a few things, is to get a chance to go all the way through it, remind ourselves what this piece is like if you've sung it before, or starting to get familiar with it if you haven't. Go back and make sure we've started to pick up some intervals and pitches in particular sections, talk about where breath marks are going to be, where we need to do some group breathing in moments, and then just a little bit of discussion about kind of musicality things. We're not going to deal with German tonight. If you want to try your German skills out and practice on German, you certainly can. I would say that it may be more beneficial to sing on ta or la or da, or even the English text, though we wouldn't be using that. You certainly can if that helps you guide you along as we go. I will try and reference page numbers and measures on the page as much as I can as we go through. These measures aren't numbered, so I just kind of count off what measure we are and what part of the page as we go along. At the beginning, we're simply going through from beginning to end the tenor portion, including the tenor quartet or actually sextet solo sections. So please sing along on those. If it's something that you would be interested in auditioning for at some point, there'll probably be a process for that. And if you already know those moments because we've rehearsed them together, just all the better. So here is the tenor pitch. Here's an E. And here's all the way at the beginning, N. Here's B. And the tutti. Solo section. Tutti. Tempo change. 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, 2, and 2, 1, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, E natural, 2. Solo. Tutti. At K. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, E natural. 2. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. All right, tenors. If you're at home, clap for Dennis. He's been doing this great all night. So here is what I'd like to do next, is talk about breath marks through this. And I'm going to give you the breath marks for the solo sections as well, in case you are interested in that, so that we are all on board with that. At the beginning, obviously, there's just that short little moment for tenors and basses on page 1. Nothing there in particular. When you get to the bottom of page 2, and we have the trio section, the tenor 1, tenor 2, and the bass soloists, at the top of page 3, there is a lift for all parts in the second measure after the word spricht, so before the second beat there. On page 3, the third measure after the first beat, after Licht, take a lift, take a breath. And then at the top of page 4, there's also a fermata marking. And so every time we have a fermata, then obviously we're going to have a chance to take a breath there. None of these fermatas carry through into the next thing. There is then the end of this solo section, and we get to C, and we reach the tutti. At the downbeat, after the downbeat of C, there's a lift for the soloist to join the tutti section. We get to the top of page 5, a lift after the first beat, that is por after the syllable por. Bottom of page 5, after the first beat, after the syllable cor. Top of page 6, after the fermata, after the word Kunst. And we get to letter D. In this D section, there is a lot of rest, so there are no group breaths. I did want to point out a musicality thing, a German pronunciation issue. At the top of page 7 in the third measure, we're going to put the emphasis on the downbeat, so we end up singing Seelen. So a little less emphasis on the second eighth note, Seelen. Not so heavy. When we get to then letter E, that is at the top of page 6, that is a solo tenor section as well. So there's a lift after Kunst for all parts on the downbeat, after the downbeat of letter E, so as not to interrupt the entrance of the tenor solo there. Going on, tenor solo then has a lift at the bottom of page 8, between in the third measure, between the words Seelen and Nehmt after the first beat. Top of page 9 at letter F, after the first beat, there's a lift, and as we come into the tutti section at letter F. The bottom of page 9, after the word Kunst, there's a lift, so we're doing 4-bar phrases, essentially. At the bottom of page 10, in the presto, we've moved to a new tempo. There's a quick lift after Kunst again, mostly to give rhythmic vitality, not really a chance for a lot of air, but a chance to clean up the chord structure so we know we're singing together in that moment. Top of page 11, we are now into a section again that has a lot of rests, so we don't need to worry so much about taking a group breath because there's plenty of time to, but it also gives you a chance to tank up because on page 12, you need to sustain for a decent amount of time. We're moving at a quick tempo, but it still requires a lot of air to stay in the center of the pitch, particularly for tenors and sopranos who are very high in the tessitura. I mean, really everybody is, that we're in a place where we have to make a lot of sound in the mid-high range for upper voices in particular. At the top of page 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure. After at the end of the fifth measure, there's a lift, there's a breath before the last measure of that top of 13. The bottom of 13, the tenor and bass breath is actually in the third measure. So that is one measure prior to what sopranos and altos will breathe. So this is a moment where we have offset breaths in different sections. Tenors and basses breathe at the end of the third measure. Top of page 14, after the, top of page 14, the first measure, everyone takes a breath before the tenor solo, as if you were going on to sing the tenor solo, and tenors, it's a chance for you to practice there anyway. So we need the lift to get into that solo section, and we just don't want to sing through into the downbeat and cover up the tenor entrance, the tenor solo. Bottom of page 14 for the tenor solo after the, at the end of the second measure, take a lift, and then at the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure after the first beat, there's also a lift, very quick lift, but there's a lift there as well. Tutti enters then again at the top of 15, so there's a lift before the tutti entrance for the soloist. Again, these sections here now, 15 and 16, breaths are given in the rests because there is a lot of time between phrases, so you have plenty of time to breathe again to tank up and be ready for what happens at K, which is a repeat of what we did earlier. When we get to the top of page 18, measure 1, 2, 3, 4, everyone takes a lift at the end of that measure after the syllable Gunst. Again, at the bottom of 18, after the syllable Gunst in the second measure, take a lift. And then at the bottom of page 18, the last measure after Gunst, we're going to take a lift. Again, 4-bar phrases, pretty straightforward on that, and at this tempo, they're quick lifts. When you get to the top of page 19, our last page, know that that downbeat feels like it comes quick. And I think that's why it's more important to really nail the breath on the bottom, and it's probably a good idea to write in the text that you're singing as well as what pitch you're singing. It's actually the same, so you can write same or whatever and write the won't as your text in that moment. I'd like to go back now to the first tutti entrance at C, and we're going to do this first time with just the tenor portion, just the tenor part. Here's pitch at C, and 1. 2, 1, 2. And Zale, 2, 1, and 2, 2, 1, and 2. Short, 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 lift. Lift. And lift. And that's our new tempo. We're going to stop there for a moment. Let's go back to C with mostly accompaniment now, mostly the accompaniment. Here is your pitch at C, tenors, and we'll start on the downbeat. And D, D. Solo. Tutti. Good, nice job, thank you. Thank you, Dennis. We're gonna hold there for a second. Dennis, let's hold there for a second. So let's go back and grab parts here, starting at letter G in our new tempo, tenors. Here's your C at G, the second beat, and 1. Sorry, let's just do the tenor part, just the tenor part. And 1. 2, 1, 2, and. Two, one, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, E natural, 2, and 1, 2. Solo section. Tutti section. natural, 2 and 1, 2. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. All right, we're gonna go back to that. We're going back to letter F, so we can make the transition between F and G, mostly with accompaniment. And let me just check the comments here really quickly. If you have any questions or you do have any comments that you would like to make, please make sure you're making them in the video feed so that I can see them, and I'll try to get to those before we're done. So we're going to start at F. Here's the tenor pitch.
On the accompaniment.
Yep, with the accompaniment, please. Here's F. N. Lift. 2G section. 2 and 2, 1, 2. 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, E natural and 1, 2. 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. All right. Tenors, thank you so much for joining in this sectional tonight. There'll be more information about what's coming up next week for some rehearsals, so watch your emails for that. And I thank you for joining us. Please continue to put questions or comments in the video if you have, or send me an email if you need, if you have any concerns about what we worked on tonight, or just have any questions about anything going on with our season as we are moving forward. All right, basses are up next for our final sectional of the evening in about 5 minutes. We're pretty much ready to go here. I was going to double check our comments here. Basses, we're going to start in just a few seconds here. I want to make sure that everybody is seeing what they need to see and making sure I'm getting through any questions that got posted anywhere. So hopefully you have music basis from the PDF that was sent out. We'll be doing the Beethoven Choral Fantasy this evening for your sectional time. And let's go back to here. Okay. I'm going to bring the video feed back up for myself so I can see what's going on. All right, so basses, we are, again, like I said, working on the Beethoven Choral Fantasy. A couple of things I want to go through before we get started here. Just so you're aware, next week we will be having another virtual rehearsal. There'll be some information coming out about that in the next few days, early next week, with information on what that means. We may not be doing a sectional, we may be doing a larger group rehearsal, so I want to let you know about that as soon as we've got some more details down about that. We have other events too, like this event we're making public, but our big event coming up is November 5th, and that is 10 choral compositions that everybody should sing or know, or are particularly important. Friends of mine, colleagues, choral conductors from around the region are going to be talking about pieces that they consider to be important for them, or something that they would like to share with us as a community, as an organization, and as a choral group, ensemble, and a singing community. And so we are excited to have that event on November 5th. Information about that is on our Facebook page as well, and there's going to be I'm going to be hosting that and talking about, telling you about the people that are a part of it as we go, and seeing their presentations as well as the music, and hearing the songs that they have decided to bring for that event. So be an exciting night, and is open to the public. We want you to share that event with friends and family as a part of what we're doing for this season. Tonight, again, we're hosted at First United Methodist Church, and I want to thank Aisha for doing video and sound for us again. She's been here all night, and this is our 4th sectional now, and of course joining me here is Dennis at the piano, and we are so pleased that he's here to play again. I hope you enjoy his musical gifts for us tonight as we go forward. This is his 4th time through this, and I think we're gonna make it, but I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to get what they need and be ready to make some music. The plan for this sectional is to go actually from front to back on the piece first, focusing mostly on the bass part. We're going to get through beginning to end with the tempo changes and all of that, so you have a chance to remind yourself how this song goes if you've sung it before, or starting to get familiarized with it if you have never done it. Then we will go back and pick some sections apart and do some part alone playing, focus really on those bass sections. We'll deal with some breath marks, where those breaths need to happen, talk all the way through this score about where we're doing some of those breathing moments, as well as some other musicality issues that we need to discuss for this piece. Tonight, I encourage you to sing on ta, la, or da, or whatever you would like. If you're comfortable with the German, you certainly can try, but I don't think it's necessary for tonight. We're working on pitches and rhythms tonight, and I want you to be very focused on that. If you want to sing in English, that's fine too. We won't be using that English text at any point, so it may not serve you as well to use that. I would say move forward with singing on a neutral syllable, or the German if it is comfortable for you. And I think with that, I did want to mention that if you were have watched the video or were participating live in our event from last week, the Singing Revolution documentary film that we talked about, I wanted to bring up one other film that is out there by the same organization, by the same company. It's called To Breathe as One, and it focuses particularly on the song festival itself, the history, and less about the actual revolution portion of it, but how the song festival developed, and has some more specific details on that. And I thought is a great kind of next part of that story if you're interested. So get in touch with me if you want to know more about that. I think you can actually watch the whole thing on YouTube now, I believe. So it's out there, To Breathe as One. And another shout out to one of our singers, Carla Mackey, who had on October 12th their new little baby, Lena. She is having some medical issues, so we're keeping her family in our thoughts and prayers as we move forward and think about how everything is kind of different now. And so they're spending some time in Omaha to make sure that Lena becomes healthy and is able to have a wonderful life. And so we're thankful for that life, and thankful for all of the members of our organization who make this music thing important to us. So here's from the beginning of the Beethoven. Here's the bass's first pitch, and we're going to go all the way through. And here we go, solo part. C tutti. Solo section at E. Bass. Tutti F. New tempo. One, two, one, two, one, in C, two, N. Two, N. Solo section. bass. Tutti. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, C. N. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one. All right, it's a very stable bass part. It really outlines the chord structures for us, and really is the the bottom structure of these chords as we go through. So you're always kind of holding up the rest of the sections with your pitches all the way through this basses. I wanted to go back to the beginning and talk with you about all of our breath marks throughout the piece, including the parts in the solo sections. If I didn't mention this, when this happens, when we are doing this, there will be a solo sextet, actually, 6 singers that are a part of this, and so there is a bass solo part, and want you to have a chance to kind of get familiar with those two if you're interested in auditioning for that, as it would come up. And so at the beginning, on the first page, you just have those 3 pitches. There's nothing to really worry about there. At the bottom of page 2, there's the 3-part men's entrance. And your first group breath is at the top of page 3, the second measure after the first beat, after the word spricht. Okay, so that's our first lift. Middle of page 3, the third measure after the first beat, after Licht. And then after the fermata, of course, at the top of 4. All the fermatas in this piece, none of them carry over, so there's always a breath after fermatas in this. When we get to the tutti section at C, we are essentially going in 4-bar phrases, so you can kind of count out where all of our breaths will be. At the top of page 5, our first breath then is after the syllable por, after the first beat. Bottom of page 5, after the first beat, after the syllable cor. And then at the top of page 6, after the fermata. We get to D, and in this section there's a lot of rest and moments where you can breathe, so there are no group breaths particularly in this section. I did want to point out one musicality thing, a German pronunciation moment. At the top of page 7, on the third beat, we want the emphasis on the downbeat, Seelen, and not Seelen, but Seelen, right? So there's accent and then unaccented on the second syllable in that moment. When we get to the top of page 8, we go back into a solo quartet section. The bass solo enters then at the bottom of 8. And the only breath there that you need to really be worried about is the top of page 9, the lift before the tutti section. Okay, so we are now at F in this tutti section. At the bottom of page 9, after the first beat of the third measure, after the word Kunst, there's a lift. Take a breath there. Again, that's a 4-bar phrase. Same thing then as we get to the presto, bottom of page 10, we have a lift after Kunst in our new tempo. It's really not a breath, it's really just a quick release to line up our chord and to have rhythmic clarity in that moment so that we sing as an ensemble. We have no group breaths on page 11 because there's a lot of rest in the section, but it's also a moment where you need to tank up a lot of air, because when we get to page 12, we have this long sustained note high in your range. That E flat, you get to sing it loudly, but it's still high for a lot of basses, and so we really want to make sure that we've got a lot of air to carry that with our best tone. And it's not about singing loud in that moment as it is singing with your best singing tone all the way through that. So make sure you're tanking up lots of air before we get there. Top of 13, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th measure after the syllable Gunst, we are going to take a lift. And then at the bottom of 18, in the third measure, after Gunst, there is a lift there. This is an offset breath Most of these breaths have been the entire choir breathing together. In this case, it's tenors and basses first, and then in the next measure, sopranos and altos. So just so you're aware, voices would carry over as you're taking a lift to come into that fourth measure on the bottom of 18. At the top of page 14, letter J, everyone needs to make a lift before the tenor solo entrance. We don't want to sing across the bar into the measure and cover up that first entrance by the tenors. So really that turns mostly into basically a half note or one beat, Gunst, and then the tenor is in. Okay, bottom of 14, that's the bass solo section. There is a lift in the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth measure at the bottom of 14 between Gaben and D-Gaben. At the top of page 15, there is a lift, a breath before the tutti section. When we get to 16, then this is like before, where there's a lot of rests between the phrases, but this is a moment for you to get plenty of air so that you're tanked up for page 17, and a lot of sound and a lot of good choral tone through page 17. When we get to the top of page 18, 1, 2, 3, fourth measure, everyone takes a breath after Gunst. Bottom of 18, second measure after Gunst, and then at the bottom of 18, the last measure after Gunst. So we're taking those 3 breaths every 4 measures, and being aware that when we get to our very last page, you sing on the downbeat. So that lift is really important at the bottom of 18, but you also probably need to mark in your score either the text that you're going to be singing at the top of 18 or your pitch, which is the same. So you need to remember you're singing the same pitch on lont, on our vowel there. So it'd be good to write that in as well as your breath. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to rehearsal C. And that is on page 4. And we're going to do mostly just the bass part here, starting at C and a 1. Fermata. These are short. Da, da. 2, 1, and short. Da, da. Bum. Z. 2, 1, and up. 2, 1, and 2. 2, and short, 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 solo section. Bass. Tutti section, and. Good, and let's stop there for right now. I was just thinking about a conductor that I sang with, and he talked about this being a very pillar part, like that you are always singing the anchor notes for the chords, and this are almost always basses. So we're always finding those tonic moments there, where some C's or F's or G's that relate to our key most of the time for you. So here's letter C. We're going to go with the accompaniment this time at C. Here is your pitch. Yep, no problem. And right on C, N. Solo section. Tutti section. Good, we're going to stop there for a second. Great. So let's go, we're going to continue on here at G with just the bass part now for a moment, starting at the bottom of 10 at our new tempo. And 1, D, D, D.
Okay.
Yep, and 2. 2, 1, 2, and. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, C. Okay. Two, one, two, one, two. Solo section. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, C. One, two, one, two, one, two, one. All right, so let's go back to letter F. And we're going to make the transition into the new tempo with accompaniment. So we're going to start on the that downbeat of F. You come in on beat 2 basses. Here's your C. Here we go. And 1. New tempo. Section. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, basses, and everybody who's been tuning in. Some of you I saw just stayed through for the whole evening and got some extra rehearsal. That's fantastic. If there are any comments, please make sure you leave them in the video here. I'll be posting this video again. It'll be shared so you can review it and use it for rehearsal as we go forward. And looking forward to sharing some more time with you, making some music down the road. Watch your emails for more information, and have a good night. Big thanks to Dennis and Aisha again for their time this evening. All right. See you later.